Welcome to No Room for Phonies,
episode 94.
And we are talking about the second half of life with our friend Tracy Giesbrecht.
Yeah, it was a good conversation, and without further ado, we'll just get started.
Okay, welcome to No Room for Phonies, and we are here tonight with our very good friend Tracy, who we have known since Sebastian was born, like just before Sebastian was born, because that's when we met, right?
Yeah.
And you were our first phone call from the hospital when he was born.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Yep.
You were. You and Dave were the first people we called.
Oh, I feel so honored.
When he was born. Yep. Because that was a very hard time.
Yeah.
Like I had just lost my
Yeah.
mom and all that stuff. And and we had just started coming like to church with you guys and meeting you guys. And yeah, you were our first phone call.
Nice.
9:00 in the morning, I think, or something, right?
8:30. Well, you called
8:30.
around 9.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was born around 8:30 in the morning.
Oh,
So yeah.
I'm so honored. If
So
I
that-
never acknowledged that honor before.
Yeah, that was
Acknowledging it now.
yeah. So
That's
that
so
kind of
nice.
set the tone for the rest of our
friendship. We
Yeah.
dove in the deep end right from
the beginning.
Right
Well,
from the
that's
beginning.
kind of what
That's
we have always been like.
our
We've kind of
specialty.
dove in the deep end.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight, I wanted to talk about the second half of life because I feel like we're all in the second half of life. So
Chances are really good.
that we are.
Not all of our listeners.
don't
but
like-
maybe most of our listeners.
I don't
are.
like to admit sometimes that I'm in the second half of life, but I think that we are. So the book that I have read about the second half of life that I really have liked is Richard Rohr, who is one of my favorite authors. He's a priest, which is funny for me because I'm definitely not Catholic, but his writing is so. He runs the Center for Contemplation somewhere down in the States, anyway, and he's
Franciscan.
Franciscan. He's just a brilliant
He's a different kind of.
priest. Yeah. Like I think he got almost thrown out of the Catholic Church. So anyway, so I always start with a
You
big
like that,
quote.
the
I
rebel.
love that. I love that. But I always start with a big quote, and I love this quote that he says is that we are the clumsy stewards of our own souls. Life is indeed momentous, created by accumulated moments in which the deeper I is slowly revealed if we are ready to see it. We are here to give back fully and freely what we were first given ourselves. The most courageous and free act we will ever perform. It takes both halves of our life to do it. And I love that quote because it allows you to be free enough to make all the kinds of mistakes that you need to make in order to be a person and still be okay. Because, right? So that appeals to me. So, yeah.
I think that this is one of the things I like about him is he's so human.
Yeah.
There's no, perfectionism is not a...
No.
I love that he's written all these books. He's a
Like-
beautiful thinker. He's a sought-after speaker. And we are the clumsy stewards
Yeah.
of our souls.
And he feels that
He is.
whatever he is writing about is what he feels about himself. And when he
He's very
shares
humble.
deeply about some of his own struggles and he had health concerns and, issues and things and the kinds of depression and things that he went through himself, then you think, okay, well, if you're allowed this brilliant man who's supposed to be able to think his way out of anything, or you're allowed to feel that way, then I guess I am too, right? Because that's part of the process, I think, of becoming the person that you are
authentic
meant to
person.
be, right? So anyway, but I love his book, Falling Upward, and I've read it. You've read some of it?
Yeah, I'm like as people have heard on this podcast, I've started about 6 books, and I'm still making my way through them all.
Oh, I'm surprised.
I
That's me too. Absolutely.
And meanwhile,
I pick.
I am sitting there with my journal, going through every page of the book right to the
But
end.
that's why it can take so long, is because you read a quote like that. I can't move on from that.
No, Oh, I write it down.
I can't just read that and then not think about it all day, which means
That you
That
don't
you
read
don't keep
any of the
reading.
rest of the book. So I just wondered what we each thought the difference between the first two, like the two halves of life are. Like what you consider to be. I know what he considers in the book. I know some of that. But I just wondered what you feel yourselves.
Well, I mean, I don't know if stereotypically women get talk about like having a midlife crisis, but men certainly have that. So until I had heard of his concept of the second half of life, I would have said that life is like when you're young and you think you're going to make it big and be important and whatever, and then you reach midlife and it's like the imposter syndrome kicks in and you feel you're nowhere near, and then you have the crisis like, oh my, I don't know if I'll have enough time, and then that's where different men act differently and try out different crazy things to try and recover that youthfulness and stuff. So that would be my own personal understanding of two halves of lives until I read his book, and now I have a different understanding of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what he says about the first and the second half, but I know Dave read this book, and I remember it making an impression on him as well, as he was probably,
Mm-hmm.
well, he thought he would be midlife,
Yeah.
right? And I think
Yeah.
that's I think that's part of the point too, right? Is the things that you're building, the potential that you think that you had,
Mm-hmm.
that at some point you go, well, this isn't panning out exactly the way I thought it was. But then I think, like you're saying, some people move into, the flashy car, or
Mm-hmm.
the next wife,
Yeah.
younger, whatever,
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
that midlife, a more mature way, I think, or hopefully a way where you can look inside and go, okay, none of those things or accomplishments happened or didn't happen the way I thought they would, but I'm still okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's still okay. Oh, but those weren't the important things after all. And I think, definitely Dave's death is a before and after
Right.
Mhm. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's a
marker.
100%.
of
Yeah.
what's and of what's important and what's not important and what means something and what doesn't mean
Well, and
anything.
you had this like, now I'm in the second half of life. Like
Yeah.
you might have been heading in that direction, but you weren't really like, you were dabbling,
Yeah.
And then-
We were planning for it.
planning,
Planning
Yes.
for it. And
Yes.
then all of a sudden, well, that half isn't going to happen
Mm-hmm.
at all the way
You thought.
You
we
planned.
thought it was going to happen, right?
And I mean, I think that, what he is what he kind of says is that, you learn to live with that sort of feeling that life is just going to happen the way it happens. And you're more accepting of complete opposite of what you thought was going to be.
Well, you thought you had so much control,
Yeah.
right? We thought we were
Yeah.
building something. We thought, I have the tools in myself to do this and create that.
Yeah.
And
And I
then,
mean,
and then it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
no, and
There's
I mean,
other forces around.
one of the things he says is the tools that you need for the first half of your life are not the same tools that you need for the second half of your life. That you need completely different way of looking at life when you hit the second half. And I mean,
Yeah. I think the reason I like the first line of that quote so much, we are the clumsy stewards of our own souls, is because I think post-traumatic, dramatic death, I spent a lot of time going, what means anything? Where do I find meaning in life anymore? Nothing that I put meaning on before means anything now. For example, health, right? Like I'm very interested in nutrition. I do a lot of reading about it. We eat a really healthy diet. I hate exercising. Dave kept me exercising, right?
Yeah.
We kind of coordinated for a better, longer, healthier life,
And then you got,
and then it doesn't mean
and then
anything.
you got screwed.
Right? And so I was a good while where I thought, I'm never going to care about that again. It's never going to matter to me again, right? And slowly that starts to come back, and I feel like it matters to me now, because not for longevity necessarily, but for feeling good today,
Yes.
right? And the only thing, and it still doesn't matter because it still ends the same way for all of us,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
There is nothing in a critical moment like that. There was nothing that I could find for a very long time that meant anything, and the only thing that I can come up with is basically that we are, what are we here for? What is this
Yeah,
about? What are
what's
we
the
here for?
yeah.
What's the point? And the only thing I can come up with, or have come up with, is sort of like through the back door, because everything disintegrates, everything dies. Houses that were here in our childhood, we can drive
Yeah.
by now and go, they're not there. Like everything that we see has the potential to disappear and be gone. The only thing we don't know ends is our consciousness. We don't know.
Right.
And there's some pretty compelling evidence coming out of some actual university studies now that are able to measure some things and go, we don't know what's going on here. These studies are really interesting because they went into it to try and find out what some of these experiences around a deathbed are.
Yes.
Why are they happening? Are they the medication at the end of life? Do we emit some sort of chemicals or hormones before we die and whatever?
Right.
They went in to find out what that was as scientists so they could discredit all the woo-woo around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they ended up going, oh, no, there's something going on
Right.
here that we can't explain, right? So, we don't know, we still don't know what it is, but it's not in the same category as the material world that we see,
No.
that we know for sure, right? So, the development of our consciousness, which we could talk about more, about what that means, is the only thing that gives me any sense of meaning or
Yes.
purpose to live.
But do you equate the development of your consciousness with the development of yourself?
Sort of. Not in the sort of, but at a different level. So not anything that in the first half of life maybe
No.
we would have. The building of education,
Yeah.
the development of skills, that kind of thing. I equate it more with things like eradicating resentment from your
Yes.
heart,
Yes.
from your soul,
Yes.
right?
Moving past
Being curious
bitterness,
about fear.
yeah.
And how fear steers your life.
Yes.
And being courageously curious about what's going on inside of you, and kind of elevating above,
Yeah.
like you guys have all these creative projects, and it does something for you that's outside of the material.
Yes,
Right?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
100%.
so that
It's-
kind of thing, like just a different.
How can I
level
make
of
this
outside
work?
of
Like, how does life?
what is creating beauty do to me?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I really like how then that it's the stewards of our souls, because it is that taking care of, being a steward, taking care, nurturing, guarding, all of that. But it's at the soul level. It's not just
Well, I
a
think.
mind full of ideas.
Yeah.
Or
Well, and I think one of the things that Richard Rohr is famous for is taking people inside themselves.
Yeah.
So it's more than
Contemplative.
right? Like that's what he does.
Yeah.
So in your second half of life, and I mean I think that it happens to some people, kind of earlier because you become that. Some people just naturally become deeper thinkers and more compassionate and more like I think your second half of life is where you look at the world differently than you did when you were
Well, and
trying
in a
to
sense,
survive.
yeah, in a sense, those things can happen, I think,
Any
anytime,
Yes.
right? Like I would
Yes.
say that my kids, having gone through this,
Absolutely.
are in a whole different frame of mind than they would have been otherwise,
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah.
And I would say they've grappled with the same sort of questions. Like it's a whole,
Well, and you think of yourself even now with your own mom
yeah,
being, in a home, like ill, like all the things that you're going through with that
Yeah.
changes the way you see things. And so instead of resisting that, which is what I see as the barrier to moving into the second half of life, is when you're trying to, like that to me is a midlife crisis.
Is when you're fighting it.
When you're fighting what really needs to happen within your wounded soul is where you're kind of looking and saying, I need to be more compassionate. I need to, sometimes you need to get rid of things from your life that are holding you back.
yeah,
So
yeah,
to me, it's just the difference between the two halves of life is a lot in how you look at things.
yeah. And I think there's something to watch as we move in this direction that I think are the structure of our society kind of sets us up to not do this well, in that we have this period of time when we work and then we retire, and then we are less challenged.
Yes.
We're done then. We're done. The productivity that we have come to do, we're done, and we're no longer we're no longer necessary
Yes.
to the people around us. We still can be, but we feel
But you really
we're
as
allowed
a,
to opt out at that point.
but you
kind
really
of.
have to, if you don't want to be like that, you really have to, like, that's part
Yeah.
of this podcast for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is that I had to seek a way to keep myself like sharing ideas
Engaged.
and engaged. And, that's why I help people and so
Yeah,
because
to be involved and challenge, like this is a challenge to set yourself outside of
Yeah.
your comfort zone. Do something,
yeah,
outside of your comfort zone that's challenging and new. That's new.
That's new.
again.
And
Yeah.
and really you don't have to necessarily see how you're drawing from the first set of skills.
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
No,
You don't have
right?
to know how that is.
because it really isn't
I know
about.
I'm still working, but for me, like a year and a half ago, I never pictured myself moving into a managerial position. It was never an aspiration of my life. But, when a couple people mentioned, would I consider it, whatever I thought, okay, well, I've taught for 32 years. And so, I still have a few more years of working planned. Do I still want to do the same thing? And I was like, no.
Right.
So
But it's not.
I
But it's
don't-
for a
like,
different reason than status, and
Yeah.
which is very much.
but my
a first-
day-to-day thing,
Challenge.
like occasionally I'm like, oh yeah, I know how to use that software for this educational purpose, so I can help this new teacher do that. But most of the day I'm using a whole new set of skills that I didn't have to exercise that much as a teacher.
And how's that feel?
It's exciting.
Yeah.
So
Isn't that fun?
It's kind of more energizing.
But
That's
then you
really
also
cool.
have the depth of yourself and what you know about yourself that you bring to the job that can also help people. Like I always said, maturity in leadership is a thing.
Well, there's a little bit of the, when you turn, I don't know, no magic number, but, you turn 50, you stop caring about what everybody thinks about you. Not to be arrogant, cocky as a leader. You don't care what people think of you. It's just, you don't need to ride that self-conscious.
You're not looking for approval, or you're
approval.
making decisions for different reasons.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I love the statement that he makes in his book when he says, "No wise person ever wanted to be younger." So, because what a normal goal to a young person is becomes a neurotic hindrance in old age.
Can you think of an example of that?
Well, I don't know. I just think it's funny that he says no wise person ever wanted to be younger.
I'd love a younger body.
Yeah. But do you
I'd like
want
to
to
be- I'd
really
like to be
go through
35.
all the, like your body would like to be 35, but do you really want to go through all those things that you went through as a younger? Sometimes I think I'd like to go through those things with my old brain.
Yeah. If you had a younger body and younger energy,
Yeah.
Yes.
you might want to you might go, I'd
I
have done
could
a
do
few
this,
things differently.
Mm-hmm.
And with my old brain, as you said.
Yeah.
It might come out differently.
of
With the
future.
wisdom,
With the
right?
wisdom.
Like that's what you're...
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. And I one of the things that I love about him is his, and I think we can have a big discussion about this, is what about grace? Because he sees grace as the foundation for everything. And I think that grace is a very second half of life thing, that you really understand it more.
And you can hold grace for others more. And yourself.
I think that it's an important part of the distinction between what I would say about developing your consciousness and like some sort of skills or perfectionism or even just being good, being, like at some point, I had this, she's a yoga teacher and a dance teacher once, and I was like, yeah, I was going to sign up for one of your classes and whatever. And I'm really nervous because of whatever. And, she's thin and she's fit and she's young and she's bubbly. And she leaned over to me and she went, am I allowed to swear?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah,
She said,
100%.
It's all bullshit anyway, right?
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed. Like it punctured the perfectionism and I have to do and I want to do. And you'd be amazed at how many times I think that. When I get myself wrapped into even, I need to forgive this or I need to do that or I shouldn't have said that or whatever. And then you want to go, oh,
It's all bullshit.
it's all about it. But yeah. I don't know. It somehow it just like takes it all down a notch and lets me go, we're all just working on this.
Yes.
And it's whatever is got you wound up usually isn't what it's about anyway.
Well, see, the definition of grace now can be it's all bullshit anyway. So just
That's what I
relax.
think.
and I think church gave grace a very bad rap.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to diss church. I'm going to say religiosity has given grace a really bad rap because grace became like almost like you can't admit that you're pissed off at somebody. You have to have grace for everything and you can't be a real person and you can't say it's bullshit. But real grace is
It's calling the bullshit.
Yeah.
And still going and still loving.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yourself and
like putting yourself out there when you know the other person maybe in your mind isn't worth the trouble necessarily, right? Because you don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
you don't know.
right?
There's a lot more compassion for where we're really at.
Yeah. And I think, it leads into the next thing that I was kind of thinking about is like, we need to see each other with truth and compassion in order to be able to live a life that is really authentic or has integrity. So I have to be able, and I mean, I like Brene Brown's thing where she says you don't have to share your deep thoughts and your truth with every single person.
Yeah.
Like there are people who earn it and people who don't. Like I believe that. But at some level, you have to get down to the nitty gritty of who you are
Yeah.
and what you're struggling with
Yeah.
in order to really have.
Well, I think when the truth and compassion starts with you and you're, like say you're pissed off about something with somebody. So it has less to do with them. If we're thinking
Yes,
about our own
yeah.
consciousness, it has less, or our own souls, it has less to do with them and more like, okay, why did that bother me? Like for real, why did why is that so offensive to me?
Yes.
And, what am I holding on to? What am I afraid of? What am I, what was offended in me? Where does it hurt? Who is it? Who
And
says
what's
that?
it
Is
bringing
that Kate?
back from the past?
Where, ask where it hurts. Where's that hurt? And why? Why does it hurt there? And work on your own healing and your own whatever they do next might not bother you as much.
Yes. And that to me is what kind of, when he says grace is the foundation of everything. If you're not working on yourself, like he says at the top, your own messed up soul, then everything else is just harder. So, but
Agreed.
so our mature years, I love this whole idea, are characterized by a kind of bright sadness and sober happiness.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. I thought that was an interesting description. I don't think maybe he is, but I don't think he's specifically talking about grief, but that has certainly been my grief
100%.
walk.
Luminous darkness.
Yeah.
Like, I love that phrase of the simultaneous coexistence of deep suffering and intense joy. Like, I'm sure there were times when you thought, I'm never going to laugh again.
Yeah.
And then you find yourself laughing and you're like, wait,
And
I'm still really sad.
and
How
laugh
can
and
I
go,
be-"
wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. I
Yeah.
laugh. Yeah. Actually, it's interesting. Yeah. I have felt strangely both of those. Yes. Mingling like hand in hand. Sometimes the thing that is bringing you joy has a shadow, right?
Right.
You see something your kids do, or a new job, or Jenica completed her master's, and whatever it is.
Yes.
And you have so much joy and
But it's that.
side by side.
Yeah. I think that if we, like, I often think in terms of like young moms and how they have to kind of post this beautiful life that they're building for their kids
On Instagram.
on social media. And I often think, well, like, if we could just come to terms with the fact that life is kind of like moving from one sort of incident to the next, and then in between there's joy and fun and whatever, but there's a lot of life that we have to cope with. And I think, and that's true for everybody,
Yeah.
and yet it makes it very hard for.
And it's everything. And there is a pressure for toxic positivity.
Yes.
Of course, that's happening. This again with my mom. The one day I was just getting ready to leave her, and she every night when I leave her, thank you so much. I appreciate what you do so much. I love you. Like, there's a kindness and gentleness that's the intensity is new. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, that's good,
Right?
because sometimes
It can go the other way.
Yes, it can go the other way.
know. And she'll say all those things, and we were reminiscing about something as I was leaving, and it was a happy memory, and she said, "It's been a good life, right?" And for context, my mom has suffered. My mom has had real challenges for her. She's 92 years old. Of
Right.
course she has.
Right.
Right. Of course she has. And as soon as she said it, it's been a good life, right? And I said, yeah, it's been good. And I just felt like this shadow crossed her face, and I went, it's been everything, Mom.
Yeah.
And it kind of pierced, and she was like, yeah, it has.
But
It's been
that's what life
everything.
is.
It's been everything. I think where we get hung up and is when we think the goal is happiness.
Yes.
Or our entitlement is happiness, like where we pull
Well, and to
happiness.
me, yeah.
I
And
know it's-
happiness is an ice cream cone.
right,
Joy is something that you have that sustains
in
you
spite of things
through
too.
things.
But there also is that pressure, like you said, you saw the shadow go across your mom. So there also is that pressure to not acknowledge those shadows.
Right. Or to, like I think it's such a relief when we can say, this was really hard. So what is the goal then? If it's not to make sure that nothing hard ever happens, right?
Well, and I think the fact that the shadow goes across, that shadow is there, if we can acknowledge that that's part of life,
yeah.
and it's just part of
And also
being human.
that you've survived it.
Yeah.
You've survived it.
Well, and he
like-
talks about that as we get older, we understand that discernment of everyday life. That life is just, it is what it is. So you go up and, we go out every morning or a lot of mornings and enjoy a cup of coffee on our front porch and enjoy our flowers. That's great. Then somebody calls and says something terrible has happened, doesn't downplay the fact that we've,
right.
like
It
you
doesn't
just
make it
move
not
from
worth
thing to
anything.
thing.
Yeah.
And I think as you get older, and especially if you've had to live through some stuff, I think it gets easier to be more discerning about life.
Yeah, it's interesting. You could look at life like it's just a series of joyful moments that are punctuated by some bad things. But I think people do the other way a lot often. Oh, it's hard, and then joyful, and then, geez, doesn't get hard again.
Yes.
Like it's like,
Yeah.
well, it
And-
depends. We all.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that you have to be willing to. I read this book one time that talked about kind of riding the wave, right? And
Yeah.
then it always comes back.
It always comes back.
You're on this big high, but
Yeah.
you have to learn to.
Yeah, grief can be talked about like that too, right? Like waves of grief, which I have heard and I've understood and I get. My analogy was a little more like labor pains because I was actually really surprised how physical grief is. Like really shocked that we could be not talking about anything and I could feel it coming like a labor pain.
But I think
Or
deep
also
grief.
like nausea.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
deep
dear.
grief is that. Like,
Yeah, very. Yeah,
like when you're when your
in the thick of it.
soulmate, right? Like there's
Yeah.
different levels of it,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And we would be not necessarily doing anything, and all of a sudden I go, "Oh, here it comes!" Like, and it would just roll through my body. But I learned that it's not going to stay. Just breathe. Just breathe.
Well, and they talk about that. Like I've talked about that a lot when it comes to. We read a book called Permission to Feel, and it's that whole idea that you need to actually feel it all the way through you out to the other
Just
side,
let it roll through. Yeah.
and then it'll be okay. But you actually have to do that whole thing of feeling it.
Yeah.
Because if
have
you
to
don't,
cooperate.
you
have to cooperate
yeah.
with it and let it go because resistance kind of leaves it in there,
No,
Well, it's interesting because I still struggle with so we're having a nice morning and then something bad happens. And then it's like, I can focus on, okay, everything's ruined. Everything that was nice this morning is now gone and not hold on to it. Oh, it was nice. It's like, oh no, that's ruined. And then the rest of the day, predicting wrongly, is going to be terrible.
and I'm like, it just happened, so I'm over. Let's go.
But just like
Let's
whenever
go get an ice cream cone.
it's like the first time I ever said the F word, I was like, I'm at a different time pace than you
Yeah.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's been
Well,
Right.
and the other
Yeah.
way around too. Sometimes I'm like, okay, snap out of it, and she's like,
No,
not ready to
I'm
snap out
I'm
of it
still
still in it.
feeling it.
I'm still in it.
It's not through
But I have a
yet.
solution for you.
Yeah,
That's cerebral.
no, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes you do that too. But there's been a lot of times where I've had to just like look around the room and go, "No, is there anything wrong? Are you in danger? No, you're not. It's okay. You're
You
safe.
can, yeah.
You're breathing. Nothing's changed from a minute ago to now. I mean, there was a moment
Yeah.
where everything changed from that minute to this, but then." And there's some ripple effects of that, of course. You know,
Because that's trauma.
I was
right?
in, you know, I've done lots of therapy along the way, and in the beginning, a few months in, I said to the therapist, "Can you help me with the fact that every night when I go to bed, I replay the last 10 minutes? Every night I go through all of it, or sometimes the whole day, and then this happened, and then that happened. Like, can I not do that somehow?" And she said, "No."
Yeah.
You
That's
have
the-
to do that.
Wow.
Some people, she said, some people get to prepare if their spouse is sick or something. They
Right.
prepare ahead of time. She said this is like reverse preparation, and you will go over that until you don't need to anymore,
Right.
right? And there came a point where I didn't need to, where I needed to less.
Yeah.
Still every now and then, but mostly, yeah. I guess I must have part of my brain that was in shock, because when you go through a trauma like that, it is a brain injury, right?
Yeah.
And so the parts of my brain were still learning about it,
Yeah.
right? My whole self couldn't learn that all at one time, and you just had to keep.
That's interesting though, like not giving you a strategy for making it stop, but actually continuing to do that till you didn't need to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
And I was fortunate because I wasn't going to work the next day or anything. So
Right.
I didn't have to you
Buck
got to
up.
get up soon, or
Yeah.
you've got to, whatever. I could let it play out for as long as it needed to be. But
yeah, no, there are people who definitely have to, but I still say when you deny yourself the opportunity to, like, the need to, if you go back to his words, to contemplate it, that you end up taking longer. I think
if you stuff it,
if you stuff it.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think you have to.
I agree.
You have to put it out there.
Yeah.
But
And there's not necessarily a timeline that I'll just feel it all and then it will be over.
yeah, no.
Right? There's also
Right. Okay, I'm
Again-
gonna go in my room for a half an hour. I'm gonna feel it all, and then I'm done.
Yeah.
Because that's not how.
Again, we're not as in control as we think we are.
No, and I still think like not the same comparison at all, but there are times when I even look at my kids sometimes and I think, oh, my mom would have really loved
Yeah.
Sebastian,
For sure.
or Zachary, and she would have loved having conversations with them.
Yeah.
Like she would have really enjoyed it. My dad, I don't know about that, but
In a different way.
In a different way. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like,
Yeah. No. it
where
goes
that
on.
and I'm like, my mom passed away 27 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it can still hit you in a wave.
Well, yes, because what people who think you should be over it by now don't realize is that person is not there in your future. So
Right.
maybe I should be over it for today, but something's going to happen tomorrow and he's not going to be there then either.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So there isn't really an over it where the future he was supposed to be in.
Well, you think of the difference between saying to someone you're moving on or you're moving forward.
Yeah.
Like you don't move on,
No.
but you do have to move forward. But you don't have to move forward at any particular pace,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? You
Yeah.
can make your own.
And that might look different for everyone,
Yeah.
right?
When I had the trauma that I had leaving work at when I retired, it wasn't wonderful. And I've moved forward from that, but very much at my own pace. So, and I still have moments when that all comes back.
Yeah.
And, well,
Yeah.
why aren't you over that?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we don't.
I don't know.
Well,
No.
the interesting all about the brain science that they're studying now, is how long it takes the brain to heal, and they can. But there's also the promise of like the neuroplasticity and of change, and even in older adult brains, there's still the possibility for. So.
Well, the
Yeah,
book
there's
I'm
a-
reading.
not as hard
There's
as-
The book I'm
there's
reading-
the soul level, but there's still a biological level.
Well, and I'm
Absolutely.
reading
Yeah.
this whole book right now about the vagus nerve. And I just started reading about the whole like biology of it. But there's a whole bunch of things that you can do to strengthen that vagus nerve, which controls so much of your, the neurological part of your
and the
fight, flight,
the fight, flight, freeze syndrome.
So in our development, we often think we do these things so that we can produce more. Like this is, I think, at first half and the
Yeah.
second half. We
Right.
can produce more. We can grow more. We can be better parents. We can, whatever. But what if it's all about consciousness or soul? We do those things like keep our brain healthy in service of what we're doing with
To our- with our
ourselves.
soul.
Yeah, staying bright, learning
Yeah.
new things.
yes.
Not for their sake,
Mm-hmm.
but for our inner development's sake and being on top of it. We have had a few discussions over the last couple of years about medicating and not medicating.
Right.
And I don't mean like the proper kind, like that you would get from a doctor. I mean like self-medication type
Yeah.
Yeah.
type things. And I have found like there's a lot of that I cannot do because I need all hands on deck up here.
Right.
I don't need to numb something or slow something down. I need like it is intense grief. I need all my faculties
Yes.
functioning as well as I possibly can.
Interesting.
That's how I felt.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. Because if you numb it, when you unnumb,
It'll
it's
still
all
be there.
still there.
Yes.
And so
there are times for that.
Yeah,
and this,
100%.
the therapist, I talked about that too. And she would say, listen, like if you've been dealing with this all day in an intense way and you can't get to sleep, take something.
yes.
Like tomorrow's another day. It'll all still be here again tomorrow. Like
Right.
that kind of thing, right? Yeah, it's a different take. Do you know never mind. I'm not going to be able to pull it up. Joseph. The hero's journey.
Oh, yes. I know of the hero's journey, but
I know exactly who you mean.
I know the hero's journey. We don't care
Joseph.
who it is.
Campbell?
Yes.
Yes.
Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, where it's about us and our accomplishments and, getting to a higher level, and we are the hero of our own journey and all of that kind of thing. A woman who worked with him has since written the
Yes, the heroine's journey.
heroine's journey.
Yes.
Yes.
I heard
Another book I'm slowly working my way through.
Okay, now I
It's a
have to
book
read
that I
that.
heard on a podcast, but you weren't listening to the same podcast, and I
Okay.
thought, oh, I want you to read
It's
that.
so good, and it flips it on its head, where all of this building and getting skills and learning, education, all of those things are for the development of your consciousness, not your consciousness for the development of your hero's accomplishment and building. And like it's kind of a classically male female
Right. Yeah.
reversal
Oh,
that
I need to read that book.
you will like it.
Yeah.
Maureen, somebody, you'll like it. The heroine's
That's
journey.
very cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, one of his, just to kind of wrap things up, he talks about the fact that wholeness comes from meditation, self-doubt, study, and conversation. and creative doubt or curiosity keeps us with a perpetual beginner's mind, growing humble, enduring the mystery of life. And I know you are very much a mystic.
Yeah.
That's why I think you would like reading more of Richard Rohr, because
Yes,
he's
well,
very much a
I'm going to read that other
mystic.
book, which is written by two women compiling his writings
Yes.
and speeches. And
Yeah, it's something about love. But that whole thing about everything you read now talks about the idea of curiosity, right? Like, I just read a book that talked about compassionate curiosity, where you listen and then you ask questions. But that whole idea that wholeness comes from self-doubt and study and
I love that
conversation.
so
To
much.
me, I just think that is, like, if we could convince the people in the first half of life that self-doubt, like, how
it's
do
okay.
serves you.
It serves you.
Oh, it's appropriate.
Yeah.
And sometimes, I was watching a young mother with her kids, and she was wrangling a bunch of stuff, and you could see there was renovations happening on this, and she was so confident, and I thought, appropriately so, for your time of life and what you're trying to get through, hats off. That's all really great. But I think we want certainty
yes, oh,
and confidence so much, more than anything. We
But
want to
you-
be sure of
yes,
something.
yes.
Right? We want to create a narrative we can be super comfortable with. We want to know we're right. And when you start to think for 1 second about how much information there is in the world, what's all going on, and how much about it that you know, how much we don't know about everything, this side of life and the other side, how much we know is so infinitesimally small
Yeah.
that we all should think about it regularly and have a child's mind, a beginner's mind.
A beginner. I just like the whole
beginner's
idea,
mind.
a perpetual beginner's mind,
Yeah.
and enduring the mystery of life. And I like the fact that he doesn't say enjoying the mystery of life.
Yeah.
He says
no, it's uncomfortable.
enduring the mystery of life,
Yeah.
because life is just, I really think that us moving to this place, and I think that does happen more in the second half of life, where you kind of say, today's a good day, this hour's everything's going okay, but I know that I don't know what's going to happen. I've only got today, and I know that I can say this, but I have a good friend. He was on the podcast and he talked about this, but he had a very, very serious medical condition, Jim.
Yeah. Oh,
It was
the storytelling podcast.
yeah, the
Couple
storytelling
episodes
podcast. But anyway,
of aortic dissection.
aortic dissection.
Oh,
So
that's terrifying.
yeah, so he has today and tomorrow and maybe the next day, and every day is he's enduring the mystery of life. And so just to kind of
I mean, just what you can learn from him and how he looks at life now.
and he's like you can listen to him talk at the pod. He's whatever, and he messages me stuff all the time and whatever, and he just has that beginner's mind, that that he loves conversation. He just, that curiosity about life, and it's a real example of really enduring the mystery of life when you don't know what tomorrow's going to bring. Even
a
though
lot
we
of
all are in
courage.
that position, really.
I know, but we don't think about it because it's scary. It takes
that's-
courage to
yeah.
really look at what we don't know, what we're not sure of, what the mystery,
Yeah.
if you really think
how
about it,
soon things could unravel.
unravel quickly.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah.
right. Well, not to end on an unraveling note.
Sorry.
No, it's fine.
But I do think that,
There's a freedom in being uncertain too.
yes, there certainly is.
Because, we know that we have tried to hold on to a certain narrative even when it was a struggle to do so. And there's a certain amount of relief in going, actually, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, I don't know.
And I think that is, that I want to go back to what I would consider as one of my favorite quotes from the top. Can't get my thing to work properly because I don't know what I'm doing. Where he says, we are the clumsy stewards of our own souls. I almost think that that's like something that you need to write on your mirror.
I was just going to say tattoo on my forearm.
We are the clumsy stewards of our own souls.
Yeah.
And we will
And
continue.
we're fumbling along together.
Yeah.
Right? That's really what we've got is together.
Yes. And when he says, we really do figure out life by conversation, that, and the kind of conversation that's authentic, where you're ready to, actually say the things that make a difference rather than just all the, the fluff. So we will continue, the three of us, being clumsy stewards of our own souls.
We will
So,
continue the clumsy conversation.
yes.
For sure.
All right.
Thank you very much, Tracy,
Yeah,
for
it was
joining
good.
us
Thank you.
tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's
Thanks
very
for having
fun.
me.
Cool.
Aren't you going to ask me my pet peeve? That's the
Oh,
end.
yes. I forgot that on the
You
other.
did with Sebastian.
Okay. So, yeah, I did forget, Sebastian. So, what is your pet peeve?
Mansplaining.
Thank you.
Even when it's not a man.
I
Because
know.
some women mansplain
Oh, they do.
too, but mostly men.
Mostly men.
Well,
do.
you call it
Mansplaining.
officiousness. When
I
it's
call it
women.
officiousness.
Officiousness?
When it's women that
When
do
it's
it.
when
women,
it's
and it's like, no, you actually need to stand here, and then I need this, and then
Have you thought about this?
every time I go, to Fabricland.
You're not going to get sponsored by Fabric.
No, I will not be being sponsored by Fabricland. Every time I go to Fabriclands, there's some officious woman. Well, exactly, you can't put that there. And how much of this do you really want? And I'm like, just cut the fabric and do it a little faster if you don't mind.
Well, it's pretty funny because I check in, because in my career, I've mostly worked with women, a few men here and there every once in a while. But I once I heard the term mansplaining, I was like, oh, I better self-monitor here. So I check in every once in a while. Was that a little mansplaining?
He does it.
You don't strike me as...
Oh, he does it when
With
he's
Pam,
he does
I
it when he's
do.
explaining a.
But it's terrible. Like, I can
nice of
teach
you.
somebody else to knit and crochet. The moment I'm teaching her to knit and crochet, she's
Here,
"Stop,
just,
man."
let me show you this. And I'm like, excuse me?
Well, how can I teach you without explaining all the details? And then you're just mansplaining.
Yeah. Anyway, and what is your favorite way to spend a day?
Oh, favorite way to spend a day. I love to cook for friends. I love dinner parties. I love them outside. I love new things. So anytime, I love the airport. I know I'm a freak. Traveling.
Yeah.
I like writing in a coffee shop. I don't know why,
Oh,
but I love to write
Thank
in
you
the
for
coffee
saying
shop.
that because
Yeah.
I like to read and journal. I do like to do that. And I think that's silly because I have this beautiful, I can read and journal and whatever, but there's something.
like to go to the coffee shop
I love
too?
to go to a coffee shop.
Something everybody else wandering
Yeah.
The
around
shared
and you
space.
in your own.
Yeah.
And I don't
world
want to
is-
go to Starbucks. I want to go to a little, when we went to Quebec City, there are beautiful little coffee shops everywhere and people
Nice.
with laptops and, there's just
Yeah.
all that, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it's third space.
It's a vibe.
Like what
Yeah.
Starbucks created and their whatever.
I do
as
like
a
the
brand.
chairs at Starbucks.
Yes.
I will say the chairs.
But
are
the
nice.
independent coffee shop,
Yeah,
yeah.
If you
Yep.
can find one.
I
You
love
can
doing
find
that.
one. Yeah. Cool.
All right. Thank you. Good night.
All right. Thanks for joining us on No Room for Phonies. On August 30th, we will
Come back and continue
the
reflecting
discussion
on reflecting on what Tracy shared with us.
about the second half of life on No Room for Phonies.